we actually start the discussion of which is the best weapons, I do want to make a little disclaimers of frequently asked questions. I know that there's going to be some little concerns around here, and the thing is that when I was planning my next video, it was pretty much basically that. The best weapons that you would have on Lost of the Fallen, but I learned while writing my notes, while doing my testing, while leveling my weapons, I learned that there's some little mechanics in here that are not directly told to you, that they do function like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and all the regular Souls that we learn to love and hate. But this mechanics is the mono stats and the multi-stats weapons, and that is not nothing new. Those are just quality weapons, but I learned that the game here manages them a little bit differently than what it does in Elden Ring, for example, or Dark Souls. So for example, Dark Souls would have quality weapons, but they would be downscaled on the quality scaling that they have, because they are designed to balance a little bit of something for you not to be able to, while spreading too much into many stats, have that much more of a huge difference, whereas in here there is that huge difference, because the multi-stats weapons right here have very high scaling despite of them being multi-stat weapons. So for example, you would have weapons right here that will scale with B in every single stat, so that it's imbalanced, because that weapon is naturally going to be on raw power the best out of them all. So there are weapons that have mono stats that have very high scaling in that mono stat, and then we have multi-stats, and then we have the quality that have basically scaling every single stat, and they just get so broken once you get to the different thresholds of New Game Plus. So that is how we are going to be handling these videos. These weapons that I am going to showcase you right now, they are mono stat weapons that are going to be amazing for the single regular first playthrough. These are the best weapons for the single or regular first playthrough. And then on a different video we're going to talk about the best New Game Plus weapons that are going to be multi-stat weapons, and then on a separate different video we're going to talk about which are the most powerful weapons for a over-level character that would have all of the stats already capped, or soft capped, hard capped, and which would be the best weapons, most strongest weapons then. But for this case scenario, for this showcase purpose, all of the weapons that we are going to have right here, if you're wondering why is your weapon not here, I'm not covering all of them. I'm just covering the ones that I have at the moment. There's Elian Sword. I haven't gotten the Umbral ending myself right now. I've been doing several different things in my playthroughs, but just be aware that if your weapon is not here, it's probably because it's a multi-stat weapon, or because I don't have the weapon. So yeah, there's that. Also, before we continue, in the video description for most of these weapons, I am going to have each individual standalone build for them. If you want to go check them out, they are going to be on the video description. I'm missing some of them, but trust me, I'm still working on them. But most of them we have them covered here, right here in the channel, so you can check out all of those individual builds right there. That being said, let's begin with everyone's favorite, and yeah, this cannot be helped. This was bound to happen. Like, honestly, this was really bound to happen. I know that everyone is very tired of seeing Pietes's sword right here, but it's just a very good weapon. Available very early in the game. It comes from the second boss of the game, and yes, you do require some umbral seedings to get to trade for this thing. But you can also be gathering those if you are binging players, so that there's not much of an issue when it comes to get this weapon. The range of this thing is just massive. It's filthy. It was nerfed recently, but it was only nerfed in PvP, so don't worry, the weapon is still very much busted on PvE. And the amazing thing is that on the rune sockets, it has radiance rune sockets, meaning you can add a radiance rune socket that diminishes the biggest one of them all, that diminishes Inferno scaling. And since you're not going to be using Inferno because this is a mono stat scaling weapon, each one of them is going to potentially be giving you like 100 to 150 damage in return, so that is actually quite nice. On top of that, the scaling is A, and on itself, just the regular weapon, one-handed weapons, it deals 400 attack power once you have hard capped your faith, so it was bound to happen. this weapon had to be mentioned. Moving on, we have for the agility builds, we have the left hand bringer of Stillness sword. Now this is not as good as the Pieta sword. This one is just going to reach 350 attack power. It doesn't have that much range. And the rune sockets, it has agility rune sockets, 2 agility rune sockets and 1 strength rune socket. Why is that relevant? Well, because the strength rune sockets have the ones that give you agility while downscaling the strength, so you do have the option to have one of those 150 gems right there. For the rest of them, it is more safer to use the dual wielding ones, which are going to be able to use 2 of them. That are going to be increasing your damage by 50 to 75. Ideally, this is a weapon that you would be dual wielding, and if it's downgraded by the Pietas, what makes this up for everything that this thing might have as a downside is that it has frostbite. 80 frostbite built up. It is really not that much, but it is great. It is amazing once you dual wield it, because it's very, very powerful. It's very, very fast attacking. And hands down, there's 2 versions of this thing. There's the left hand bringer of stillness, and then there's the right hand bringer of stillness. But the right hand bringer of stillness has a little bit more damage, but that damage is wither damage, so it's not really that initial damage, and it doesn't have frostbite. So yeah, this is one of my favorite weapons when it comes to agility builds. Strength. Boinks, big, heavy boinks, soinks. We have this sort of skin and tooth right here. This bad boy is going to reach a total of 860 damage just by scaling your strength. Not only that, but it has 200 fire rate build-up, meaning that every time that you hit an enemy, even though that this is not an infernal weapon, you're always going to be burning the enemy. It has hyper armor. One of the biggest downsides is that, yes, of course, it is a heavy void weapon, so it's going to be weighty, my boy. It's going to be 41.3 pounds. So there's that. And not much more than that. It has physical damage, it has a little bit of fire damage, and the rune allocation, it's really not that bad. It has strength runes, which you can use to increase the damage potential by 75 extra points for each one of them. And it also has an inferno, which you can use to increase the elemental damage, but it's not going to increase the elemental damage that much, because that is scaled on a percentage basis on the fire damage that the weapon has. The weapon has 117 fire damage, so it's really not that good. What you can do in that rune socket that you have right there is to add a little bit of health upon kill, life stealing gem, which is ideally going to make this thing so good. So yeah, there we go. And then we have the Fallen Lord Sword. This is an inferno weapon, and this is the living proof of why is this game so unbalanced and so busted. This is basically the Inferno version of the Pietas. It doesn't deal, it's heavier than the previous one, it doesn't deal as much damage, and as you can see on screen, it's not dealing that much more damage because it's not socketed. But remember that since you do have that Inferno socket right there, you can potentially be increasing the damage 3 times by 150 because of the high Inferno sockets that you would be able to have right here. And also it's going to have 300 build up for burning. Also, when you kill enemies with these bad boys, it has that little lava fire that deals AoE damage, so it protects you quite okay. It's just so amazing. Once you have managed to socket all of the proper runes right here, it's going to deal 3k damage on charge heavy attacks. This thing is monstrous, and it's basically the Pietas' version of an infernal weapon. Although we do have a little bit of a different something that resembles that as well, a little bit coming on later on. And that is going to be the Grinding Axe, and arguably this is actually going to be stronger than Pietas' because this one has an infernal S scaling, it has 2 status element build-ups, and for the pure attack power it's 545 for a one-handed weapon. So this bad boy, you can dual wield it, and each one of them is going to have 545 damage. And also, if you increase, like I said, the infernal sockets, it's going to increase that 545 by 150 per each socket that you're going to have right there, ranging from 100 and 150. The only downside that I would see about this weapon is that the initial damage is wither damage. The wither damage doesn't really causes native damage on the first hit, so on the first hit Pieta is always going to be best, because the first hit is like you have to hit the enemy to be dealing the extra damage, but on consecutive attacks with enemies that have large health pools, this is going to be far stronger than the Pieta's sword. So yeah, like I said, the Elemental, Infernal, and Radiance weapons are very unbalanced in this game. Now, you thought that the Sword of Skin and Tooth was going to be the highest damaging one of them all because of the high scaling and high raw power that it had, but no, when it comes to boinks, when it comes to strength, this bad boy is going to take the price. It weighs less even, and just at the max hard cap strength, it's going to reach nearly 1k damage on base damage of the weapon. On top of that, it has strength sockets to increase that by a 75 or 100 depending on how the scaling works for this weapon, and it also has an infernal socket much like the sort of Saber and Tooth, the other big point strength weapon that we had previously. So it's basically the same thing but more powerful. It also has 100 build up for the fire or ignite right there. I always get confounded about those guys right there, but that's something that you need to have in mind, because this bad boy, it's really freaking powerful. It's even better than the previous one that we had, and I see little to no downsides at using this one instead of the other one. And finally, for the agility, we're going to have the Skin Stealer Spear. Now, this is an interesting one because this is one of the only agility weapons that is going to have S scaling and agility. And as you can see, it's a very fast attacking weapon. On top of that, it deals quite a lot of fire build-up right there for a very fast attacking weapon. This is one of the faster attacking weapons that I have ever seen in the game, and it has 440 attack range power, which is even higher than Pieta's sword for a agility weapon. The only downside that I would see on this guy is that you cannot increase the damage that much because it doesn't have that much elemental fire damage. So if you were to socket an elemental increase in damage on your sockets for Inferno that you have right there, it wouldn't be that much because the real damage that this thing has comes from physical. So one thing that you could potentially be doing instead of is just since the weapon already has so much high attack power, it's so fast attacking, it has S scaling and dexterity, what you would be doing instead for this case scenario would be placing as many life stealing gems right here, making you a very unkillable character that deals quite a lot of damage, and it always heals back with every single hit that you deal on the enemy. I do not want to imagine how really damn filthy and powerful would be to use one of these guys while dual wielding. That is basically all of the monostat weapons that I have. There's many more monostat weapons, but the ones that I was checking out, the ones that I was testing, the runes allocation, they weren't really that good. Some of them have very crappy rune allocation. So these guys, they are very powerful, they are very broken, and these are the guys that you should want to be using for each one of those builds on your playthrough for Lords of the Fallen. If you like the content, like universe, appreciate it. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel before you close the door, and I'll be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Have a beautiful day, and goodbye.